Thank you, everybody. We are recording, right? Okay, yes. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And let me hop on this too, so that while I talk, people can see my face here. It's probably a good idea. So I will join that. But yes, in the meantime, thank you, everybody, for being here. We will go over the agenda real quick on what to expect for tonight's meeting. So. Starting with ground rules and introductions, as always. Gonna have steering committee updates. Go over the different committees and work groups that our revolution has to offer right now. Different things that we're engaged with outside of the monthly meetings. Share some things that we have organizational needs for. If anybody in the audience at home or in person. Would like to help us with that stuff, financial updates, and then committee reports, and then the substance, the main event of the evening, which is our panel discussion on the recently introduced Office of Inspector General bills. And so, without further ado, real quick, we can go to the ground rules here. And so. The ground rules are, if you're here on Zoom, if you're not talking, please stay on mute just so that, we don't pick up any background noise or anything like that. If you do want to say something on Zoom, you just use the hand raise feature, and that goes for even during the general business stuff at the beginning too. And then, after the panel discussion, we are going to have a Q&A portion for audience members to ask questions. And so all we do is ask that, if you're asking a question or comment, just keep it to 1 minute or less so that, the meeting doesn't get, out of hand, people don't ramble. And then, of course, be respectful. So those are the ground rules. And then we can go around and do some introductions real quick. Maybe we could start with, the steering committee members, and then, it doesn't have to be, too long since, we have a decent amount of people, but, just keep it brief, basic things like, what is your name? Where in Howard County do you live? Or if you don't live in Howard County, where do you live? And sort of, what is your interest either in this meeting specifically? Why did you come? Or what is your interest in our revolution, Howard County, more generally speaking? And so I'll start with me and go Malik and then finish this. But yeah, I'm Jake Burdett. I'm the co-chair of the organization. Was just reelected this past May, and happy to keep doing events on relevant community issues like Office of Inspector General. So thank you all. And I live in Dorsey Search in Columbia.
Hi guys, my name is Boyd, as some of you already know. I'm an LTC and as an at-large member of the group. My focus is primarily in Palestine-related actions in Howard County. Aside from that, that's a come out there. And I think it's important for anyone to join my group and, be more involved, not just on the federal and state level, but local. So with that being said, I will pass it to my friend Francis.
Nope, Francis Lee here. Live in Runningbrook and right now I'm the treasurer and been with OR for a while. Hello.
I'm Kat Lee, co-chair. We live in Runningbrook. That's a village of Wild Lake. Special interest. One of them, I should say, is the Columbia Association and watching that. And pretty much everything else that our revolution has been involved with.
Hi, I'm Tina Daddy. I am vice chair for OR. Even though I'm new to the organization steering committee, I've been involved and a member for many years and more importantly, I've been working with a lot of the people on the steering committee. Many of the different progressive issues in Howard County. I have a lot of respect for the organization who has been consistently showing up to people. I think to
Yeah. I'm Roger Davis. Fight stream restorations and hoping the Inspector General might be some help with that.
And for those who don't know, the stream, they're not really restoring streams. That's the Orwellian term. That the corporation is, but yes, thank you, Roger. And
I'm Angie Boyer, I live in Dunlogan, and I was attracted here tonight because of the childhood. I'm very interested in, just what they have in mind, maybe a little more interested than the average person, because in addition to my interest in the county of 16 years I've lived here, I'm a CPA, so I kind of been oriented to doing things right.
David?
Yeah, I'm David Porter, last name Sam Turner, I'm married. I also live in Ellicott City. We're very interested in a lot of the things going on, because the stream restoration or greenwashing, as I call it, is one that really kind of upset me. I live on McAlpine, which has a right of way of Flight 301, and that sometimes gives me waterfront property. It used to happen once every now and now it's 4 or 5 times a year. So, and I'm really worried about that.
Thank you for being here. Robert?
Hi, Robert Goldberg, been serving the secretary since about February. I involved in the aware of the
If I already excited and all through it, it's something, I go for it. When I was in high school, I used to do great for president, so trying to educate. And I think also really excited about it, so that's why I'm things. Obviously, I also
I'm Jamie. Tell you about something. I know. We're gonna have our next tomorrow.
That we had a good time. So we're just going on, picking up on, introduction, when I come down the same, where you're talking, what more interest, either in our evolution in China or, kind of what's meaning specifically, what else you think?
My name is Pat Carter. I attend the Alpha region, and so I'm very interested in seeing the accomplishments of the I do, yes, to especially with the budget.
I'm sorry. I see that passed the primary and, yes, I'm sure everybody indoors in that race, but I certainly don't want, probably safe to say, but yes, thank you for coming. I'm very hard times looking at the right, people. When you're serving that, should be everything. So if you have a red mark, you say you.
You can unmute yourself.
Or, guys, if you're paying something in the chat, you want to introduce yourself?
Maybe they don't have
She said, if you only
can hear us.
I'm not going to show you on the audience, they're probably here, but, right now, for the room. She may rest. So. Hey, hello.
Easier.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Yes.
So we'll put in the chat, can you hear me? Oh, yes.
Doing. That's what I said.
Hey, sorry to the people at home. Is this better?
The other, because. I like you to do that. I'm not saying it. I would think sorry about that, everybody. We kind of should not transfer people. It's so each other one more time. So we want to come out with the. So, yes, sorry about that. I really want to get into that on the general business. So, through we just have one quick steering committee update. Unfortunately, the member the at-large member who's running our social media, Cat Montague, did just step down recently, and so that means there is a vacancy on the steering committee for an at-large position, and especially if anybody has interest or the skill to help run social media for us, that is definitely a need that we have right now. So we've got a whole litany of committees and different ways to get involved. And so yeah, a lot of different committees, ways to get involved real quick. And we're going to hear from some of the committees that are more active right now and some updates on that. But the big ones are, again, we need some assistance with our social media. We have a Columbia Association Watch Committee, Palestine solidarity efforts that Malik's been leading with Howard County for Free Palestine, tenant organizing and rent stabilization efforts with the Howard County Rent Stabilization Coalition, union solidarity efforts, efforts against Moms for Liberty and other, localized forms of fascism. And so we do have a Google form. If people want to sign up to get involved with any of those committees, I will share it in the Zoom chat. I'm glad to hear it. It sounds like people in the Zoom chat. So yes, I will put that in there if you want to get involved. That'd be great. In terms of some more specific needs for the county or for the chapter, I should say, is again social media. Also, Our Revolution Maryland has a website, but I think it'd be great if Our Revolution Howard County had a website. So if anybody has web design skills, that would be super helpful. Different tabling events. Viviana had just sent us one earlier today, one in September that she wants us to do. And so if people, are willing to help, volunteer at tabling events, recruit new members, that'd be great. Volunteering to onboard new members who fill out our interest form, that would be super helpful too. And then volunteering to help plan monthly social events. And so we, instead of describing what we've been up to, because a lot of that is in the committee reports, we can just go to
The treasurer's report, with Francis real quick.
Okay, we recently set up a bank account for the chapter with a CCU. That was good. I'm in the process of getting the paperwork to change it into a business account, which would allow members to assignees on the account to rotate as the officers change.
But thank you. So you know, no extra money in or out of the account. You just, now have an official bank account. So that's good.
So we do have a bunch of merch, doing t-shirts,
Huge inventory here. I just inventoried. If you are a Bernie fan, want some vintage Bernie stuff, just email us.
Yes, yes. We've got the goods. And it helps the club too.
oh yeah, books too.
Yes,
Lots of books.
yeah. Got the list here, shirts, different merch, memorabilia.
Can I, right at this point, if it's necessary, put a motion in to reimburse the late for buying the
So
yellow?
I'm gonna ask that we
Oh,
don't,
okay.
second that because, and we'll talk about this as a
Okay.
steering committee, but
Okay.
we're gonna, our Revolution Maryland, we can get funds from them, and so I don't think we need to use
All right,
chapter funds.
sounds
But,
good.
Yeah, no, but we will get you reimbursed. Promise we'll get you.
He's your first one.
Yeah, no, yeah,
No, I appreciate
yes, thank you, yes.
it.
Yep, but cool. Well, speaking of Malik, if you want to present on the.
Francis, can I switch seats with you?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
the people say the main speaker can be heard better.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So,
thank you.
and for the people in the back, please let me know if you cannot hear me. First off, hi again. My name is Malik. I am an at-large member that is handling all Palestine-related events and efforts here in Howard County. So I'm going to start off talking about some of the events that we've already done. Last month or earlier this month, we had an art build at the Elkridge Library on June 29th. And we had, what you say, like 30, 40 people show up during the event, Yes, we brought some supplies ourselves. We made a lot of posters and rocks that we then used for the Longfellow July 4th Howard County March. But we've been meaning to put events like this every month just to help bring the community together, build up morale, because times are tough right now, right? So we think it's important for all of us to come together regularly and support one another. And we were very happy to see that many people showed up. And as you can see here, let me close this real quick. We have a lot of children, a lot of events, a lot of adults, I should say, who made posters that we then used the July 4th Longfellow March for Howard County. So speaking of, not only did we do the art build, but we had a lot of people show up for the march. As you can see, we have a number of our members as well as members from the Howard County for Free Palestine group, who primarily organizes this event, and we show up to support. But we had, what you say, like 40, 50 people show up, Kat, and it was a very good community building event. We were very surprised, well, I wouldn't say very surprised. We were very happy to see we had a lot of positive engagement with the community. One or two confrontations, but for the most part, positive. And again, it was a really great event. Now, we also have been meeting regularly for the Board of Education and the Human Rights Commission's meetings, which take place monthly. We successfully went last month, and we are planning on going this month as well. And now I will be talking about some of the upcoming actions. The main one is the July 16th Israelism screening, which will be taking place at the Elkridge Library. We all highly recommend that you guys RSVP for it. If you put your email down on the sign-up sheet, we will send out RSVP links. Basically, we're going to be screening a film called Israelism, which will talk about the conditions that the Palestinian people are facing in Gaza and the West Bank. And we are going to have a conversation about that afterwards. So not only do we recommend you show up, but we also recommend you invite people who agree with you on Palestine-related matters and people who disagree with you, because we want this to be a conversation. Along with that, of course, we still have the Board of Education and the Human Rights Commission's meetings. The spots for the Board of Education have filled up this month, but of course, there'll be more open next month and so on and so forth. And I'm not sure if there are any more spots left in the Human Rights Commission meeting for testifying, but please let us know if you're interested in doing so. We'll share information with you on how to do so. That is all we have. If you guys want to get more well, that's all we have for the Palestine really events that we're doing. If you guys want to get more involved with this type of action, again, sign up on our email list, or just stop us after the meeting. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Malik.
Yes. Was that the last slide?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, round of applause. Job well done. Yes, and so I'm expecting at least as big of an applause for my presentation right here. Howard County Rent Stabilization Coalition, and as I'm about to share, we're kind of pivoting into other pro-tenant efforts. And so what we are doing, just for people who don't have any sort of knowledge of the background here, Our Revolution and other organizations formed a Howard County Rent Stabilization Coalition in about May of last year. We started in May and then officially became a coalition about September of last year. We were trying to get a rent stabilization bill introduced and passed to limit rent increases in Howard County. We actually were successful at getting a bill introduced, but unfortunately the bill died in January. It did not pass. And so the coalition kind of had to say, what do we want to do now? Are we gonna go away? And speaking of that, I see one of our core tenants, one of our core tenants in the coalition just joined the Zoom here, Keisha. I see she's connecting. Oh, we good. I see she's connecting to the audio. But yes, welcome, Keisha. You came just in time talking about the rent stabilization stuff. Keisha is the head of her own tenant organization, Howard County Solidarity, and please, follow that on TikTok and all the social medias. Feel free to post those in the Zoom chat. But yeah, so we had to decide, our bill died. Are we going to go away as a coalition? Or are we going to try to pivot into some other pro-tenant organizing efforts? And so one thing we did was we tried to run tenants in the local Columbia Association elections. And I think one of our tenants who ran and got elected is on the Zoom, I believe, Paulette, or at least was on the Zoom at one point, Paulette Pettyford Thomas. And so we did get one tenant elected in Autumn Crest in Oakland Mills. And so that was one way to build tenant power. Another way is to form these things called tenant organizations, or it's like a union, but for tenants. Basically, it gives tenants extra legal protections and rights that they don't have as individual tenants. This law was only passed allowing tenants to create these organizations in 2018 in Howard County, so it's a relatively new law. But to our knowledge, no tenants ever actually have formed one of these tenant organizations. And so that's another thing that we're trying to do right now, is build these tenant organizations, build tenant power that way, make history by being the first ones to do that, and hope that it catches waves and that tenants start to realize that this is a possibility and that it's worthwhile. And so we were starting in Autumn Crest, where Paulette was on the village board, and we're still making those efforts, but we're now doing it across the street at a place called Columbia Point, also in Oakland Mills, where our coalition leader lives. And the tenants sort of organically came together to try to push back against horrible landlord conditions. People aren't having air conditioning, people have mice, people have snakes. The dumpster, the property managers aren't taking the trash out. And it's to the point, yeah, I see Keisha just put the Howard County Solidarity stuff in the chat. Thank you, Keisha. But it was, so we've been, the tenants have been showing up to the village board meetings in Oakland Mills where Paulette's elected, telling the village board about what's going on. And on June 11th, we tested, a bunch of tenants testified, and then people were saying, hey, if you don't do something, conditions are so bad here, it's steaming hot summer. If you don't do something, get air conditioning, somebody's gonna die. And then 2 weeks later, June 25th, at the next village board meeting, we learned that one of the tenants who testified at the June 11th meeting literally did die. And this is a guy who was from Afghanistan, testified at the June 11th meeting about that he's from Afghanistan, he's from a war-torn country, he came here in 2018 looking for a better life, and that the housing conditions were so bad here that he wishes he was back in Afghanistan. Now the man has literally passed away because of allegedly from heat asphyxia. And so all that is to say, things are really ramping up with the tenant organizing efforts, and so tenants really want this, and especially in Palm Point. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, please let us know. We'd love to have your help. We just had a community barbecue and picnic not yesterday, but the Sunday before that. And so that is what these pictures are of. It's a good time. Thank you, Ying, Robert, Grant, everybody who was able to make it. Yeah, that is all I have on the rent stabilization stuff. And I'm going to go call our last one real quick while you present the
I
CA
have
stuff.
some important
Yeah.
stuff.
On this,
Oh, your work, Jim.
All right, I'm gonna let you move over. Columbia Association, as I keep reminding people, a lot of stuff goes on there, a lot of things that we don't realize. And we'll remind people how I lost the election by only 18 votes to the incumbent, who is Bill Santos. And unfortunately, Bill Santos is one of the people last year who tried to shut down resident speak out, and mostly because of the Save Our Streams people. He did not want to hear from them. And he is now chair. It was rather contentious. He was only elected by half of the people on that board. We do have a new CA president, Sean McInnes. I'm told they're going to really have to work on, he knows nothing about how things work in Columbia, so it's going to be a lot of onboarding process. He was just started June 17th. During that contentious election back in April, Keith O'Neill, who was also nominated, stepped down after he saw that things were going the way they were, and he hasn't been back. So they have now replaced him with a man named Paul Rader. I don't know a lot about him. I think he works for the state of Maryland, but that's what's going on. Right now, huge thing, and you must do this before July 11th. Email the CA board, or I put something in the chat. They can fill out a form. Could you just press enter on my computer? Easements and getting community input. Please, please, please fill this out before July 11th, because there are at least 3 different easements. I got a email today from Sharon Boyce, who's with Save Our Streams. She said, we are making progress. We have been given a proposed easements. There's at least, I think, 3 going on right now for the new development at Gateway. We have really been pushing for the residents to be included in the decision-making process, and for CA board to do their homework and research before they vote and sign off on these easements. As you know, after only 11 minutes of debate, that's when we had that Lake Elkhorn stream restoration project. A discussion of only 11 minutes, and they destroyed 100-year-old trees. So she said, please, please fill this out. Don't let your area get ruined. And so the deadline is July 11th. If you have any other further questions, feel free to email our Rev or Sharon Boyce, or go onto the Facebook for our Revolution Howard County. I can put in the chat or post on there where you can fill out this form. It's also in the chat right now. And if you live in Harper's Choice and you get the Ashley's little thing that she sends out, it's right there at the end where it says you can comment on this form. You'll have to scroll down quite a bit. but the form is there, or you can just email all of your CA representatives saying, I want a discussion, I want to be heard before you start doing these easements. And that's it. I'm going to wrap that up. Yes.
She corrected, not gateway.
Yes, it's not gateway. Say one more.
Oh, and she corrects, she sent another one?
They were only built, so it's kind of what they complain about.
Okay, well, make your voice heard any way that you'd like to know where these easements are happening.
Chad.
Yes.
So, I see there's been, a QR code at the last.
This
one.
is for our revolution.
That's our revolution.
Okay, so it's not.
Yeah. In the chat, I do have the form that they can fill out if they so choose.
But just like with Power Connect for Free House, we should start getting better at updating the link tree with stuff like that. So that's a good idea. But yes,
Question, I don't live in Columbia, when you all talk about CA stuff, is that just for Columbia residents?
Yeah.
It's right that they-
Howard County, I'm not sure on that form if it, I think it does ask where you live.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just say though, I said at the beginning, I live in Dorsey Search in Columbia, but that's only as of May of this year. Before that, I lived in Elkridge. And as you know, I've still been involved in CA politics for years now. So maybe on some things you might have to be a Columbia resident or a resident of that specific village to be able to testify, but like you can still show up, you can still engage, you can still speak your mind. So, and you're certainly knowledgeable on the stream restoration.
And you can certainly still fill it out. It doesn't say you have to live in Columbia.
Yeah.
Ask where you live.
And one good transition point here maybe is a question that I have is I wonder if the Inspector General would have jurisdiction to investigate things that happen with the Columbia Association being in Howard County, because there's certainly, as we've seen countless examples, the CA is they might be a nonprofit on paper, but they still tango with moneyed interests, it seems. And I would like to see an OIG investigate into that if possible. And so without any further ado, unless there are any comments or questions, I could go ahead and get started with the Office of Inspector General presentation. Okay, so
Do we need to come up here?
no, we'll do it after the presentation. Okay, we'll transition.
Do you want to create slides here?
Yeah, sure. But yeah, so thank you, and sorry that we're maybe 10 or 15 minutes behind schedule here. We did have some technical difficulties, but I will breeze through the presentation part. And so first things first, the reason, while we have been pushing for an Office of Inspector General in Howard County, at least me personally for years now, since like at least 2022, the reason why we decided to do this meeting and this topic this month is because, we had heard that there was going to be an Office of Inspector General bill actually introduced. And it was, of course, my council member in District 1, Councilmember Liz Walsh, who introduced the Office of Inspector General bills last month. And it's going to be up for a public hearing this month, 1 week from now. And so it's a very relevant and timely topic. And so that's why we decided to do it now, to hopefully have a positive influence on that. And so first point I want to make is that it's actually two bills. It's two companion bills, CB 47 and CB 48. CB 47 really outlines, the substance of what the office is, how it's structured, what its powers and jurisdiction is, et cetera, et cetera. The other one is more of a companion bill that, makes some other additional changes to the charter that needs to be made. For example, I think maybe editing some of the county auditor's powers, which, might have overlapped with the OIG. And so it's two bills. Both are important. CB 47 is probably fair to say the main one, but, they're both part of the package. And so, I guess really the first thing to address is, what is an Office of Inspector General? I know it's not the sexiest name for, what is actually a very important office, and probably most people might not have even heard of this thing before a month ago. And so one thing to know is that while we are only just considering creating one in Howard County now, these things do exist in other jurisdictions. And the classic description for an Office of Inspector General, what it's supposed to do, and this actually comes directly from Liz Walsh's bill. The purpose of the Office of the Inspector General is to provide increased accountability and oversight in the operations of any department, office, or agency receiving funds from the county government by identifying fraud, waste, abuse, and illegal acts in the county government, and ways to promote efficiency, accountability, and integrity in the county government. So I highlighted waste, fraud, and abuse because, every jurisdiction, might describe the job position a little bit differently, but those are the three words that you will see in basically any jurisdiction's Office of Inspector General. Their main point is investigating waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm actually really glad that Liz Walsh just outright said illegal acts in the county government, because I think there is quite a lot of that in Howard County. So I'm glad that that was added too. But really, this was my description at the bottom. I think the easiest way to put it is the Office of Inspector General is supposed to be the official watchdog for and within county government to make sure that our public dollars are not being, wasted or, given to special private interests in a corrupt manner. And, if you're at this meeting, you probably know that that is a problem in Howard County. And so, us getting an Office of Inspector General, I think, would be huge to helping to shine a light on that and maybe make the special interests afraid to even, try some of these schemes in the first place, because they know there's going to be an office watching them. In terms of, why is that important and what have they done in other jurisdictions? I didn't get a chance to link to this like I had meant to, but one of our panelists here, David Plymeyer, I think mentioned in one of his pieces in the Baltimore Brew on the Office of Inspector General that I think in just one single year, I can't remember if this was just Baltimore City or Baltimore County or both of them combined, but in just one single year, they uncovered like over $7 million of waste, fraud, and abuse. And so they do make a big impact. And another, question that people might have is, well, how are we going to pay for this new office? Isn't that going to be expensive? And this is a point that I think Liz Walsh has been making in the press, is that how are we going to pay for it? It pays for itself, because if, let's say, it costs, $3 million to set up the office between funding all the staff and all that. But if we're rooting out $7 million of waste, then we still net saved $4 million. And so, so all that to say, I think an Office of Inspector General is absolutely worth the investment. And we'll just have more money to use for actual county needs. And they have been quite successful in these other jurisdictions to do it, to the point where there have been a lot of backhanded attempts to actually disarm the offices of Inspector General, which I'm sure David will talk about a little bit on the during the panel discussion. He's written quite a bit about it, helping to make sure that those schemes were not as successful as they would have liked. And so, last, before we get started with the actual panel discussion, is I just want to go through some of the details of, Liz's bill, understanding that, this is, one, that this is, the at least CB 47, the main bill, that's 18 pages. So this is just, a very bare bones summary. I encourage people to also read the bill themselves. I linked to it earlier in the PowerPoint. But this is just a summary of some of the major takeaways. So one, and this is very important, as we'll talk about in the panel discussion with a lot of the things that, David has written about, but, ways that they've gone about trying to disarm the Office of Inspector General once it's done a good job of rooting out this corrupt behavior, is they create these advisory boards or ethics boards to oversee the Office of Inspector General and make sure that the Inspector General doesn't get out of line. And in theory, you can maybe see why something like that might be helpful, because there could be a case where you have a genuine rogue IG who's like not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So don't you want some sort of oversight board? But if the people on that oversight board are all captured by the special interest that the IG is trying to regulate, you could see how that could be a big conflict of interest and lead to them basically tying the IG's hands behind their back. And so I don't know the statistic off the top of my head. Maybe we can talk about it during the panel, maybe David or somebody knows, but I believe not all offices of Inspector General actually have an advisory board, but some do. And Liz's bill as crafted does have an IG advisory board that oversees the Inspector General. And so it is supposed to be a 6-year term for the Inspector General. And to remove the Inspector General, it requires a 2/3 vote from the advisory board for the IG. And they can't just remove them for any reason. They can only remove them for misconduct in office, persistent failure to perform the duties of office, or conduct prejudicial to the proper administration of justice. And the advisory board also, according to the statute, would give an annual performance review of the Inspector General. One positive thing is the Inspector General would have subpoena power. They have a lot of other powers too, but I noted subpoena power because our county auditor does not have subpoena power, and that has definitely tied his hands behind his back in terms of being able to investigate different complaints that have been submitted to it. And so this, in fact, that's one of the reasons why we need an IG, is because the auditor isn't powerful enough. And so the IG would have subpoena power, which would be huge. And then the last thing, because again, you can have an advisory board, but the advisory board's only as good as the ethics of the people that are on it. And so how that advisory board is appointed, I think, is very important. You can have different structures. And so the way that Liz's bill currently has it is that the advisory board is appointed by the county executive and then confirmed by members of the county council. And so that is, again, this is not all the details. Yeah, real quick, Jay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that detail on here.
Hopefully it's not 6 years.
Okay. Yes, good to know. Yes, thank you again. This is not the full in-depth summary. This is just some of the big takeaways. And again, I do encourage people to read the bill themselves so that they can see all the details that they may be curious about. And so I could continue to talk for forever, but I've been talking enough tonight. So without further ado, we can go ahead and start to transition to our panel discussion here. If I will sit on the side here in our panelists, we've got, I'll say we had 3 panelists marketed, former county executive Liz Bobo, who's here tonight, Baltimore Brew contributor David Plymire, who is also here, and then we had a woman in Baltimore City, used to live in Baltimore County, who runs a page called IG Allies, or Inspector General Allies. Unfortunately, at like 5:30 tonight, she said that her father is elderly and not in good health, and so there's a health emergency, and so she wasn't able to make it. And so we are down one panelist, but thank you to David and Liz, if you want to come on up here, and we will get started here. Or maybe Liz can sit here. And I'll sit here.
I'm sorry about
No worries.
rudely sat down.
No worries. Not at all. Not at all. Yes, this might be.
I think I might be able to step that high.
You got, or you might go with the only way you got. Use me. Yeah.
I'll get it.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Well. Yes. Well, thank you all. Thank you, both panelists, for joining us tonight. As you could see, this is very much probably the talk of the town right now in Howard County in terms of big issues, and I would say rightfully so. And so I don't want to introduce the panelists any more than I already have. I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, their background and what sort of their connection to this issue of, an Office of Inspector General is. And so we start with David.
Are you sure, Mrs. Bobo?
Okay, all right, we'll start with the former county executive and current still legend, Liz Bobo, former county executive Liz Bobo. You want to introduce yourself and, why you'd like to see an Office of Inspector General.
So I'm Liz Bobo, former county executive, former member of the Howard County Council. Rep told me I'm not loud enough. And also former member of the House of Delegates. For I can't get much louder than that. I'm soft spoken around.
That's good. We got it. We're recording it, so you're good. You're good.
Okay. And well, I don't know what to do about it, honey. That's about as loud as I can get.
If you could maybe, if you want to move up a little
Yeah,
bit,
here's the front seat
that
right
might
here.
make it easier. But yeah, no, sorry about that. But yes, you were a former county executive, former state delegate, former council member. You've done it all.
A human being, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure just where you want this to go, so I'm not going to speak very long right now. But clearly, keeping track of what's going on in government at any level is extremely important.
Yes.
And it's not easy. And we've seen some very difficult examples right here in our country, which is supposedly, and I believe, the greatest democracy the world's ever seen. And it's important to keep a really close watch on what government's doing. And there are people who try to get around it, particularly when there's a big profit to be made and there's doing, and I don't in any way want to demonize or down talk developers, but development is a huge business in Howard County and Columbia. And there's a lot of money to be made here. And there's a lot of money that was made here. Interestingly enough, and this is something, it's not on your topic, but it's something that I wish was taught in the schools, and I'm going to be talking with some people about it. The way Jim Rouse went about building his new town of Columbia was very unique in the entire country to this day. The people who had any involvement in government were unable to serve on any boards. People, whether it was your mother or your father or your sister or your brother. And he was really very, very strict in how those kinds of things were enforced. Right in there with him, HoCo July was Senator Jim Clark, who died a few years ago, who was the head of the Maryland Senate for a while. And the two of them, the Clarks and the county government became, really very close. And there was very little attempt to do something, what's the word I want to use? If not only not illegal, but unjust and self-serving, particularly to stuff your own pockets. But it was very difficult to do that here. And the government didn't do it. Jim Rouse did it. And like nothing that's ever been in this country before or since, and working with Senator Clark. So I don't really know. I've got to hear a little bit more about I haven't seen Mrs. Bill, but I do think it's a good idea. I definitely think it's a good idea. And I think people will pay close attention to it. Yeah. And I prefer to hear what else happens, and then I'll make my comments accordingly.
Yes. Well, thank you.
And I do want to say, I still think, Jim Rouse has been gone for a long time. Senator Clark has been gone for a long time. But I do think that our county, to this day, is above the standards that are in many other counties, even in the state of Maryland. But that's not enough.
That's not saying much if you're comparing to Baltimore County.
I know what you're saying, or Prince George's County.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying. I know what you're. So anyway, that's my opening, and I have my ears wide open.
Yes.
See where you want us to go with this.
Yes. Well, yeah, no, thank you, Liz, again for participating, and yeah, definitely. I think Howard County and Columbia in 2024 is not the same as in 1972, or and so yeah, we've had some change, and not all for the best, but yes, we'll go to our other.
I'm a David Kleinmeyer. I retired as the Anne Arundel County attorney 10 years ago, many years in the office of law, previous to that, a prosecutor, and done various things. And in the last 10 years, I've been writing on issues mostly of openness, transparency, and accountability in government. I used to write quite a bit in the Baltimore Sun. The Sun has changed a bit over the past 6 months in their editorial policies. So a little less of that, occasionally in the Washington Post. And Jake referred to the Baltimore Brew, which I have to say has done a very good job and really is one of the few, and I think this ties in with what Liz said, it's one of the very few, and there's two reporters doing investigative journalism. And that's where I think I would like to start. Some of us, Liz will remember I worked in Annapolis. In Annapolis, when you're in county government, you can't go 2 feet without tripping, used to. 40 years ago, you couldn't go 10 feet without tripping over a reporter. They knew everyone, they talked to everyone. Not all of them were all that smart, but people talked to them like any other. People talked to them and they found out things. That has changed so dramatically. If there's one thing I wouldn't advise my kids or grandchildren to do, would be to go into journalism. It's a wonderful profession. It's absolutely dying. So why is that relevant to this bill? As local journalism has gone away, accountability has gone away. I worked for 7 county executives, more or less, some good, some not quite as good. Public officials really are like most other human beings. They will do things they shouldn't do if they think no one is watching. It used to be that the press was watching, and hate them, yellow journalism, whatever, they were watching, and it was a form of accountability. I may not have appreciated as much when I was working in government as I do now, but now I see, and I live in Baltimore County and work a lot with people active in Baltimore County affairs. Now I see the consequences of years of neglect of transparency, accountability, and insight to what's going on. I used to joke, when I talk in Baltimore County quite a bit, I always have to start because I'm from Anne Arundel County. I was county attorney there. And I always say, okay, Anne Arundel County was not perfect, but, Baltimore County, true to its history, beginning with, Spiro Agnew, really perfected really by Dale Anderson, still has a tremendous level of what political science call soft corruption. Soft corruption is that which is not illegal, which is just plain law. I see it in Baltimore County. I used to say, and those of you in Howard County can tell me, it's somewhere in between. In Anne Arundel County, developers and builders have a tremendous amount of influence. No doubt they do. In Baltimore County, what happens is they have critical mass. They basically run the shop. I may be overstating it a little bit, but just a little. The Inspector General movement, I don't want to turn this into some sort of history, but the Inspector General movement was really a response to that. And I think at this point, local governments, given that local newspapers aren't coming back, There's no sustainable business model. The Baltimore Banner, God bless them, they do not do what I call critical reporting of local government. I've urged them to. I've talked to their editors. They aren't doing it yet. The Baltimore Sun, I've written 60 op-eds published by the Baltimore Sun. It's sad what's happened to them. There's one reporter covering Baltimore County, 800,000 plus people. They used to have a bureau of 7 in Towson alone for Baltimore County. All I'm saying is, in my opinion, an IG now is a necessity. It's no longer a luxury, and that's why you're seeing these movements develop. I want to say some good news for you. I read a lot. I was a fair legislative draftsman. I had some really excellent ones working for me, with me. I see a lot of slop that comes out. Liz Walsh's bill is a good bill. Now I know that she had probably the help of model ordinance, because there are those things for local governments and IGs. But it really hits on every note, including some things that I've suggested that are important that you don't always see, which is the duty of an employee to cooperate. In other words, if you come to see an administrative assistant in the department, with the IG, you don't want that person to be able to say, I don't want to talk. You want it to be a duty of employment for that person to talk. Because what happens if it's a duty of employment? They don't talk, they can be fired. So it's a really good bill. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I've never seen one of this. But it's a really good bill. So that's the good news. You have a really good head start. I saw the bad news where I got involved, and it was initially with pieces in the Baltimore Sun when they went after Isabel Ramos, who is the inspector general in the city. That was led by the mayor and his city solicitor. So they were attacking. I know what you said, Jake, about a rogue inspector general. That almost makes me laugh. I've seen rogue administrative hearing officers, rogue county administrative officers, rogue planning officers. They can do some damage. It's a little bit laughable to hear government officials worry about a rogue inspector general or a rogue county auditor. That's just talk. And, they're like the rest of us. Really, having someone look over your shoulder, let's face it, is not something you automatically ask for, especially if you're not used to it. So in Baltimore City, the mayor went after Ramos to try to, that's how I sort of got involved in this. We came to her defense. And then in Baltimore County, the county council, led by its chairman, they went after her, basically to take away all of her powers. It was gross. You are not there. And that's a tremendous, I don't know what the support is politically for it, Jake. But I have to say, obviously I'm familiar, it is in Baltimore County. People here are more engaged, and I think there's very good news. I would urge you to support this bill, not in every aspect of it, there's things. One thing I'll say, and then I know you want to open it up. I do think in terms of expense, we used to say, Liz, in Anne Arundel County, when people would talk about spending money, we'd say, this ain't Montgomery County. The board, the advisory board, has a lot of bells and whistles. This is just me talking. I don't think you need all that. If push came to shove and that was an issue, as long as the advisory board doesn't have the power to meddle in what the IG, the decisions she or he makes, and has some authority, you don't need a big fancy advisory board. I would hold out the one to the state prosecutor as an oversight board. It's streamlined. They meet periodically to hear reports and make recommendations. But other than that, that's their role. So if they're looking to save money at some point, I think you could cut that back. Other than that, hats off to Ms. Walsh and those of you who support it. Hopefully you will. But it's a good and necessary. even if you're not as bad off as Baltimore County. And I say that with a fair amount of knowledge of what goes on. You know? And listen, the other thing I'd say, I'm a lawyer. I never represent, I don't demonize, I don't demonize developers or builders. They are who they are. They do what they do. And I know you feel this the same way. It's the politicians and appointed officials who have to be strong enough and resist. Developers and the, you know, capitalists are like special interests. They're out to earn money. They're not, that doesn't make them bad, but they're always going to do what they do. And the currency of the trade, of course, is political donations. Last bit of advice. Don't count on an IG to fix all the problems with builder and developer influence, if that's a problem in Howard County. It may help. The IG in Baltimore County caught County Executive Olszewski. He'll deny it was him. Nonsense. Doing a special favor for David Cordish. You all know who he is. In bypassing some procedural things like a hearing when Mr. Cordish wanted to build a tennis pavilion in the back of his big glorious house in northern Baltimore County. There was others, a former person I know quite well, I won't mention his name, a former county attorney and then director of permits, approvals and inspections, waived fees. He had no authority to waive for Howard Brown, a big Owings Mill developer. I think he's done some things here. The Inspector General will catch some of that stuff if people talk, which they will, but not all of it. You know, there's always going to be a bit that depends on the integrity of the people you elect and watching the donation streams. So that's just a real, you know, realism sort of thing. But I would say I don't see an Inspector General anymore as optional because no one else is watching.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And well, thank you, David. Definitely bring, you know, a wealth of knowledge and experience to the conversation, and so super helpful to have that. And you know, you touch on the advisory board. It sounds like, I guess that is true that not all IGs do have an advisory board, and so I think that's why the devil really is in the details with those. And you know, you asked about you know, what is the reception to the bill there, and
Yeah.
you know, one, it's kind of hard to gauge that because we haven't had the public hearing process yet. There hasn't been a vote and all that, but you know, it's been getting more and more media attention now. It's good that the IGs in Baltimore County and Baltimore City have been, you know, very cooperative, I think, and happy to see that Liz is doing this and probably giving some advice maybe. And so that's been helpful. But and what I've seen in the news is that I think, you know, Liz has said in the news that she hasn't heard of any issues in the county executive's office. And so that's why I say, you know, the devil's in the detail of how exactly is that advisory board, you know, crafted. And, you know, I just added some more details to the slide. And basically, again, it's appointed by the county executive, but confirmed by county council members. And the way that the advisory board is structured is that there has to be at least 5 members who are citizens of Howard County, and each, you know, 1 member for each council district, essentially. And then beyond that, you can have 4 additional quote unquote professional members, which means you're, you know, a former IG or auditor yourself, member, you know, of a IG association, a law school dean, retired judge, something along those lines. And so I bring that up to say, you know, how the county executive may react may depend on how much of a say that he has over, you know, who is appointed to the advisory board. And so, you know, this does give him appointing authority with council confirmation. And so perhaps that will, you know, make the county executive a little bit more likely to embrace it than otherwise, but I'm not really sure. But, you know, one question I have for you, David, is if you could speak on, you know, why, you know, to show an example of why an office like this would be, you know, very good in Howard County. Like if you could speak on some of the work that the IGs have done in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, and then get into a little bit of detail of like how that, what that, the retaliation that caused from the political establishment against them in those jurisdictions.
Yeah, I try to make listen, Jake, if people have questions, I don't want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
They don't have to hold them to
Yeah.
the end.
Uh-huh.
I mean, obviously I can talk and talk. That's burned in, you know?
Yes.
But,
Okay.
yeah, that's a good question. I did read.
Like, what was the question? I heard the college and the school system, what?
So the college and the school system, we would have control over that.
Yeah, would the Office of Inspector General be able to investigate if there was some unethical things happening there in the libraries? Yeah. So for the people in the Zoom, we asked the panelists, somebody in the Zoom asked if the IG would have, oversight authority over institutions like the community college, the county library system. And that's a relevant question with the library system because, David, you're laughing at the idea that anybody could successfully characterize an auditor or an inspector general as going rogue. And yet that is exactly what happened earlier. I think that was this year, right? Or no, that was last year.
Yeah. And there's ways to deal with it. I mean, the auditor is appointing, I'm not going to characterize whether the auditor here I'm familiar with it because I was involved. If people ask me questions, but there are ways of dealing with, bad performance for any public official. I can,
Tell us what
yeah,
instance you're referring to was?
go ahead.
I mean, I won't go into detail, but it was very high profile at the time, and it was right before the sketchy Lakefront Library thing happened. But basically, and it's I won't necessarily give my take on it, but I'll just say, what the narrative was that the head of our library system, the auditor got an anonymous complaint sent to them that the head of our library system was a part of like a sorority and she was using her control.
Made a racially insensitive remark.
Or the auditor.
The auditor allegedly made a racially inappropriate remark.
In his investigation of the library system person allegedly abusing her power to allow her sorority to use like the facility for free, like not in accordance with and so that was reported anonymously to the auditor, and then he put out a report, and then the complaint was that the report had some racially motivated language because the head of the library is a Black woman.
I just wanted to add though that what was done was the library system, this should never happen in the public library system. It was early on in that.
Did what?
They closed the library and
Oh, yeah. Got it.
they can have their own private thing,
Mhm.
regardless of anything that is said, that should, the public library should be open to the public at all times.
You're right. There obviously were probably, I'll assume there were two sides to the argument, and I didn't, and there were. There are ways of sorting that. Bringing that back to this discussion, the auditor is responsible to people. That can be handled, hopefully well, within the current structure of government. The same with an inspector general, the same with the county attorney, the same with the hearing officer. I'm not saying it's always done well, but there are structures to deal with that kind of thing. It just strikes me as odd that they, or that for the inspector general, there's this enormous, elaborate structure built up. That's my only point there. I mean, I'm not saying the auditor shouldn't be accountable for an inspector general, but there are ways to do that without having such a large board in operation. I've seen it happen. Absolutely.
Oh,
He had a question first.
okay, cool. All right, Jay.
I have a question. What's your experience with whistleblowers?
That's
Are
a
they
good.
protected in the Rundle of law?
Yeah.
Or should there get this bill?
Well, not necessarily in this bill, although I didn't see it. And again, I only had time to go through it once, and I did look for the scope, but I didn't immediately find it. Whether it includes, it would not include the Columbia Association. I assure you that, unless there are specific contracts, because that's private. It's just not going to extend it. It can be extended to the Board of Education by agreement, but that's a complicated thing because the Board of Education is not part of county government. This IG is part of county government. The Board of Education is not.
And how about-
Board of Education? Absolutely not. It's an independent agency of the state of Maryland.
Meaning they don't report to the county executive, is that
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying.
still a government?
They're not subject to the control of the county executive or the control of the county council.
And I should add that CB 48 does touch on whistleblower protections.
That's-
Yes,
yeah.
CB 48, the companion bill, it does
Yeah.
touch on.
It doesn't have to be in there, but all whistleblowers should be protected now, and many counties do have the protection.
So that's helpful. to have that.
It's absolutely necessary. There's two sides to the coin. If you're going to require them to cooperate, you have, which is good, you certainly, even if you don't require them to cooperate, you must protect them from complaining, because there will be retaliation if you don't.
Yes.
In their, that's good for the career. If you're a government employee.
It's as good as their IT security and their personal, it's as good as their system, and that's their human system, and they keep their mouth shut. And their IT, is as, little people gain access to it. So it's only as good as that. It's better than nothing. But sure, if I was a whistleblower, would I feel safe? I don't know. But I feel pretty good.
I think she will.
Yep. Yeah, Kat?
Yeah.
We got you.
so But I do have this I always think it's absolutely what we're doing. I do.
Can I just lean favorably toward what? That's
Maybe I
my.
To the bill.
Got it. My concern or my proposed amendment is that the board itself would be from, one member from two nominees submitted by the county council for each jurisdiction. And that the board, the chair of the Board of Ethics chooses from those two choices. So that way, who is appointed by the county executive. So that way there's a disbursement of power, because there may be a time that this IG and the board may be expecting the county executive or the county council or one county council member. So we want to make sure that the power is dispersed throughout. So that's where I would be.
Yeah.
And then I do agree, I think it's a bit heavy on the advisory board. And another thing that they say, we had also members of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, from the University of Maryland, there are experts that can be put on this board who have it all from the county executive. I think it's too, push in one direction.
The only thing I would say, I don't disagree with anything you said or necessarily. That wouldn't rise or fall the bill for me. I understand it might be for other people. But I think you are right. Make sure that however it's structured, however you do it, that particularly if the IG is looking for multiple terms, that he or she isn't scared to go after the people at the top. There's one person at the top, the executive. And you really want to make sure, and that might be in the structure of how that person is appointed. To be honest, removal is a different thing, because just like I'm going to tell you something, County Executive Ball is not going to post this idea publicly, period, end of story. That would be politically crazy. It's also politically crazy for a county executive to try to go after an IG to get him or her fired if that IG has just found the county executive did something wrong. So there are certain rules of politics, and don't do things that, cut off and this spite face is one of them. But if they're looking for reappointment, and that depends on the county executive having a really heavy control on it, that worries me just a wee bit. And I won't be any more specific than that. It worries me a wee bit.
Then two more parts is.
For a reason is what I'm saying, it worries.
Yeah, See, that's what
Yeah.
immediately stuck out.
Mhm.
The other part is how is it indicated, it looks like that's, on the website. But then sometimes when you propose a report on the website, how effectively is that given to the public? And so that would be a concern on how is that information or that report disseminated out?
The Boulder County IG does an email blast, and I guess anyone can sign up.
Yes, but I mean, the actual report itself, how it's presented, sometimes it's, you're feeding it to a public that may not know how it's being.
There's a public, because of the confidentiality, there's a public summary that's going to be released. The full investigative report is not.
Now, my final question is, how does follow-up work? What happens after?
That's a great question because that is entirely dependent on what the IG finds. The IG has no enforcement power. In other words, if they find a crime, they refer it to the state's attorney, possibly the state prosecutor, depending on what the crime is. If it's a disciplinary violation, which many times they are, it goes to the appointing authority, whoever that is for the person. So basically, the inspector general is a fact finder. Looks at the facts, applies the law to the facts, and makes the conclusions as to whether there was fraud, waste, and abuse. What happens next is up to whatever he or she finds and what's violated and who is the responsibility to enforce it. Sometimes nothing. And that's the problem. Nothing's going to be, there's no perfect solution. I mean, because personnel actions, and this to me has always been, I fought it. Now that I'm on the outside, say the IG finds somebody, misused their authority, and should at least get a couple weeks off. You'll never know about that because the discipline of county employees is protected under the Maryland Public Information. So there can be a wee bit of frustration in the system. And that's why I said the IG is just part of what I call an entire system of accountability and transparency. And there's other parts of the system that have to work well. The PIA, which I deal with a lot, does not work well. It's been improved since there's an ombudsman. But let me tell you another little secret, as well as she can jump all over me when I say this. There's a misconception that because Maryland is a blue state, that it therefore would have good government laws. Really, the opposite is true. Because political science will tell you that states, doesn't matter which party, with a history of one party control of the legislature, have the worst good government laws. Now, I'm not saying that just because of the corruption in America, but that's just basically accepted as true. That whatever party's in power and controls those laws isn't necessarily that anxious to have people find out what they do. So Maryland's Public Information Act is not very strong. You saw the battles. I'm sure this group, was probably when it involved the police. For years and years, the police would do whatever they did, and there was absolutely no way you knew what was happening to them. Now that all got changed, but it was a big hoopla.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't miss that if you read the local newspapers. But other employees, it's still very much a secret. So that's just sort of one of the takeaways. Look at all of this in context. The IG is a great start. Sorry, I don't want to fix it.
We'll go. Yeah, Bill.
Thank you.
A little louder, a little louder.
All here for the purpose of trying to encourage good, effective discussion. But I think people understand that corruption basically is not just some surreptitious crime that doesn't really impact anybody. It takes money out of our budget to feed people and to provide social services, to provide jobs. So this corruption is cancer on our entire. And I've talked to people in local government who think that the problem in Howard County is amongst the worst in all America. So I might disagree with Terry.
Yeah, I'm with Bill on that.
That could be because.
Yes, that's a big problem.
First started the presentation.
Yeah.
You said the problem is nobody really knows what's going on. when we negotiated $70 billion for the fees for 6 months association, elected and made, there is just this rampant wholesale pillaging going on, in my opinion. I think the answer to that is to get the word out. You suggested people going into journalism earlier.
No, I didn't. Well, only if they're independently wealthy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I do it for free, but I'm retired, you know.
Well, and you know what? It's kind of like the Columbia Association Board of Directors.
Yeah.
Most of those people are volunteers.
Yeah, they are.
Because they care about the local government. And we need to find a way to, Jake, you're the king of the grassroots. Whatever it takes, knocking on doors, getting emails, sending out blasts. I think that, and I'll do my part to support you in that. And I would like to ask Liz, you're uniquely situated, having been in that position of chief executive. My concern is actually what this lady right here. I'm concerned that with the entire executive branch appointing the advisory board and them appointing the inspector general, that there's going to be a tendency to rubber stamp whatever the entire branch of government does. Do you have any suggestions on how that might be addressed?
Just by keeping a closer watch and talking to the executive more frequently and telling it just doesn't cut it. With me, this is an interesting topic for me because I don't get the point of what the heck are we doing building a new library anyway? We have a beautiful, good library sitting there. What does that say about us when we all spend all that money so that Howard Hughes can have better access to properties? I mean, I don't, so I'm not a good person. You know, that's what I think. We shouldn't be doing it at all.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
I mean, there are needs in the county. And there are probably fewer poor people in Howard County than any other county in Maryland, and possibly most of the counties in the country.
Oh, yeah.
But we have poverty here. We have homeless people here. We have kids going without meals here. What are we doing tearing down a perfectly good library? And we know what it is, apparently, not apparently, obviously, Howard Hughes thinks they can have an increased profit if they can approach it in that way. You know, I mean, I don't wish Howard Hughes poorly. I'm sure their profit is very good right now. I'm against the whole darn thing.
Or did you want to say something?
I can put a price tag right on what you said. I don't know your name. I'm sorry.
Bill.
Bill, there's a big issue in Baltimore County now, and Howard County and Anne Arundel County many years ago implemented impact fees.
Right.
Ahead of their time. And it was a bit of a struggle because, you know, Baltimore County did not. They in 2019, they faked it. They implemented an impact fee bill and it had so many loopholes, it didn't collect any money. Impact fees, as you know, are money raised from new construction, you know, paid for by the builder, basically, to pay for new infrastructure, schools in particular. So now Baltimore County's overcrowded, way behind. They left on the table. I asked a friend, budget officer in Anne Arundel County, send me the sheet. 20 years they collected $250 million, Anne Arundel County, in impact fees for public construction of public schools to expand facilities, to accommodate growth. Baltimore County, none. That and all of that, I will tell you without doubt, was because of builders and developers whispering in the ears of members of the Baltimore County Council that you can't do that. You can't impose those fees because if you do, well, they didn't really say we won't make as much money. You know, they claimed construction would stop, housing would stop, and it kept going and going and going. Now's a different time. But all of that was $250 million lost because of political, improper, I would call it, political influence. The Inspector General won't get at that stuff. You know, that really is, you have to be there, you have to watch, and there's no substitute for that. But there's a price, and it's exactly the soft corruption. So I just don't want to say this isn't going to solve all problems, but it will take a look at those contracts you're talking about. And the Inspector General often finds errors and shortcuts that were taken in there that shouldn't have been.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you, David. Remember, 1 minute, 1 minute or less. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Yes.
I'm not sure where you see the advisory panel not having. It's a lot of discussion about how it's organized. It doesn't say very much about what it's done. And Jake made the comment oversight. I wonder if it should be called the oversight board, because its main function is to hire the IG to help insulate it from the auditor problem about firing, which looking at Baltimore County, it's hired by the council, confirmed, or executive confirmed by the council. So you're trying to get away from that problem that we have with the auditor. The problem is with the expansion of the dedicated people, you could then have the executive go find those people to change the majority to get to their vote if that's it. What I think is missing from a lot of it is that the people on the ethics board commission and the IG should not be able to serve on any other board or commission, but the number of people that serving on multiple ones currently. You got to insulate them from that. I find I'm not clear how it functions in the charter with the executive and whether it is a department or not. And there's no discussion about what is the base salary, what's the schedule of the employees. That seems to be missing. And the IG seems to have inherited all the functions of the ethics commission, which is a large job of the financial exposures of all the people who are required and the lobbying report. So that's not entirely clear how that's going to function. And also, for the record, Jake helped me, other people with testimony. There's 1985 resolution that governs the authority of the auditor.
Well, thank you, Joel. I don't know if there's any response. You don't have to. Yes. Yeah, Ying and Andy. We'll do Ying, Angie, and then was there maybe one last question? Then Kat. Okay, cool. And then we'll wrap up. But yes.
Mine was sort of a comment to what David say that it would be political suicide for the county executive to fire someone who just investigated them. I agree. In a normal world, yes.
This is Howard County.
Yeah.
But Jake recounted what happened to the auditor. To me, that sums up what happens in Howard County, and it also piggyback on what people mentioned about we need to let people know what happened. It's a work chart of corruption that people don't realize because the county executive doesn't have to fire the IG himself. He can use the political allies on the county council or use other tools at his disposal. Is very powerful.
Basically, the bill, the IG.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a fail-proof. And you
No.
mentioned that, right? It's a good step, but I think the
There's a little hyperbole in what I said.
Yeah.
If in fact, most position like that, he has to get 2/3 of the council. You know, if it would be set up in that manner, then maybe he could do that. But there's no, at some point, you know, you have to hope that you have at least one county executive and 2/3 of the members of county council with integrity. Because if you don't, you're sort of screwed anyway. You know, I'm not dismissing what you're saying.
The citizens' education has to go beyond just the basics.
Sure.
What everybody does, what his roles are. We really have to look at the history, the actions of all our elected leaders, what they have done, and figure out, you know, what, there's no better way for me to call it other than org chart of power and corruption, even if it's self-corruption. But whose job is that? We all have busy lives.
That's the killer, isn't it? Yeah, my wife deals in volunteer organizations and not just in community and civic organizations, but there's a dearth of volunteers. It's very hard to get people in any capacity. You know, they're busy with their families, with their jobs, but it's hard. And that's another reason it's community activism is trailing off. in some areas, not everywhere, but I don't know what, that's why I say sometimes the IG might be the only thing left, but that's very true in Baltimore County. It's true in a lot of Anne Arundel County too. The level of community activism has gone down the same that every other sort of volunteer extra thing has gone down. But I don't know that there is a perfect replacement.
But it's community activism, and to add on to that, it's also like, you're a humble guy, so you downplay this a little bit, but when I say that, like, you're right, that probably sometime down the road, some scheme is going to be done to try to disarm the OIG if they go after the wrong person, and maybe it's political suicide, just like somebody might have said it was political suicide for Johnny O to propose that bill.
Yeah.
Now Johnny O is going to Congress, and so, but the reason why that attempt to disarm failed, maybe there's not as strong of an activism base, but it's also because of this man right here's pieces in the Baltimore Brew exposing, here's what they're trying, debunking the narrative. And so it's, whether it's the media or whether it's the community, somebody's got to be out there aggressively debunking the BS narrative if and when that comes, which it probably
I appreciate Jake, and the reason I do that is because I'm retired. And this is fair, I'm not looking for a job. I don't want a job. I'll never be appointed by Mr. Shefsky to a board or commission. So it takes a certain commitment to do that. See, I'm not saying I'm making a sacrifice. I'm not. I don't want to get this stuff, but you have to be willing, to sort of stand up. And at some point, I'm going to say this, and I say this to employees. I talk to employees sometimes. At some point, it takes a bit of guts. You just aren't going to be perfectly protected, maybe. You just have to, it's who you are. And there's no substitute for that at the end of the day. But I think you're 100% right about it. The more people are involved, the more eyes on government, the better.
And I'll add that a 2/3 majority on the council of a 5-member council is 4 members. And so, yeah, but Joel, if they all come from the county council district, there's probably going to be some allegiances there, but that, yeah, potentially, but yeah.
Just don't let that stop it from getting off the ground. Because this is how, I don't want to think like a politician, perhaps again, but that's the kind of issue. Like I said, this ball's not going to pose this, but what'll happen is an issue like that will get picked. I'm not saying, Joel, your points are good. An issue like that will get picked, and all of a sudden it's the big issue, and it's carrying the day, and we can't do this. I've seen that 1,000 times, and all of you, if you sat there and watch them. So just keep everything in perspective and be willing sometimes to compromise, because get it started is the important part. That's what they did in Baltimore City. That's what they did in Baltimore County. And yeah, some of us had to sit down and write a few words and get the word out. And Mrs. Johnson, who couldn't be here tonight, took off and bombarded the council. They just backed off and just get it started. Joel, I think your idea, I completely understand what you're saying about the independence, but don't let that torpedo either thing with torpedoes the idea.
I'm hearing.
Yeah, no.
It's still time. The bill is still
Great bill.
right.
It's a great start.
Yeah, we
There you go.
can amend it
Yeah.
and salvage it once we got our foot in the door. But yeah, Angie and then Kat.
There's a very legitimate concern being brought up by excessive county executive control. The obvious solution, how it occurred to me after I looked at how this was set up, is you're gonna have one member on the advisory board for each county council district, so have the county council member appoint the one from their district. And no more than 2 professional members to be appointed by the county executive. That helps to disperse the control. And,
That's not a bad suggestion. And then
I'm surprised at how this did it.
I would guess, without knowing, I'm guessing that like Liz is trying to make some strategic compromises here to make sure that the county executive doesn't veto it. That would be my guess. I don't know that for sure, but.
Or maybe she's afraid of her own colleagues. See, I can say anything. I want.
Yeah.
I laugh because I think your idea has a lot of merit, man. I do. but from just watching Baltimore County and knowing, I'd be scared. I'm scared to death to give any member of that council any more power than they already have. And that's just a bias now. But it's a bias of about 7 years of watching and hearing and reading, and knowing what goes on. So you might be right. It would just be hard for me to get there because I've seen what the council, they have been the instruments of the builders and developers in Baltimore County. Much more so, I think, than here. The county executives, the former county executive told me when I started to work on these issues, and I said, well, maybe Johnny Olszewski's going to be different. He said, David, and he said, I go ahead and tilt at those windmills. But Mr. Olszewski, he isn't going to want to jump into that rat's nest any more than his two predecessors. And the county council wields a lot of power. Well, and he was exactly right. We didn't move the needle that much on most of those development issues. So I just come from another background where the county council is sort of I'm more afraid of them than I'm of other people. So it's sort of, you have to pick your poison, but the balance might be the idea, the checks and balances like anything else.
Yes. Last question from Kat, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm sorry we went long, everybody, but Kat.
So you brought up, capital, and I just want to make sure that it's on your radar, the Council Bill number 37, which would reduce, which is a carve out right now, and you're looking at if that had been in effect in 2023, instead of getting $13 million, was it would cut it by $10,600,000.
But what?
Out of. So this is like an 85% reduction for the. That they're trying to do with that second property. So I would just make sure that you guys are fully aware of that. We don't want. I personally don't want any more car balance because the more car balance we have.
Whose bill is that?
That is.
That doesn't.
37.
Okay, I'll look into it. No, but I mean, that's a good point though. So it's basically, exempting people from APFO requirements, which prevents people from being able to build in overcrowded areas. And who wants to be able to build in overcrowded areas? Developers who don't want to follow regulations. And so stuff like that, bills like that are being introduced on a regular basis because of this moneyed influence. And so that's exactly why we need, an OIG, in my opinion. So I'll leave it at that, unless there's any last comments, questions.
What can we do to support individually support?
Yes, good question. So there is a public hearing, and we are definitely going to send an email about this. And in fact, we have an email, we have a sign up sheet. If Malik, maybe you could pass it around. If we already don't have your email and want to sign up, we're going to send an email with the link to sign up to testify next Monday, 7 p.m. at the George Howard Building. That's probably the most important thing is, make it as difficult as possible. We all know, if somebody was, completely free from political retaliation, this bill might be vetoed, and we have to make it or not pass in the first place. So we have to make it as hard as possible for our elected officials to not vote for this or to veto it. And so as many people as possible at that public hearing, it may get tabled at the end of the month, and then the county council is on recess in August. And so they may not vote on this thing until like September. So all that to say, this panel is just the beginning of what may be a long or medium term, drive to keep the momentum and attention on this bill. And thank you, David. Thank you, Liz, for both being a part of that tonight. And so next week.
Take numbers count. Numbers of people at the hearing,
Yeah.
numbers of emails,
Yeah.
numbers of letter.
Yes.
They don't have to be good numbers count.
Yes.
That's just the way it works.
Yes.
So
you can sign up until the meeting starts. I wouldn't recommend doing that because then you won't testify till like 10 p.m. Yeah, it'll be late night for you. But yeah, I'd recommend doing it sooner rather than later though. No, no, no. You can do it up until the moment of. But yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Need some help?
Yeah.
Yeah.